Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You're listening once again to the Hour of the Time. And tonight it's really going to be an hour of the time because we're going to straighten some things out here. We've got to do that. So tonight, since so many of you insist upon needing some kind of a daddy, I'm going to try to fulfill that role for you just a little bit. I don't really want to be your daddy. I don't want you to need a daddy. I don't need a daddy. But sometimes, folks, somebody has to clarify things. And last night's broadcast brought home to me that there is a real need to clarify a lot of things. And so I'm going to try to do that for you. I'm here for you tonight. I'm going to try to blow a path through the fog so that the headlights can shine down the road and you can see what's really there. I'm going to try to part the veil. I'm going to try to pull some cobwebs out from between some of your ears. Because, last night just absolutely infuriated me. And after I calmed down and thought about it for a while, there just seems to be this conception that that if you do this, or this, somehow everything magically is going to be all right, and you're not going to take any risk, and you're not going to suffer, and if you prepare and all this kind of stuff, you're going to survive whatever comes. And I just got one question for you: what the hell for? Ladies and gentlemen, when I was a boy, I was an extremely sensitive young man and very willful. I wanted to do something good. I've always wanted that. I've always had this need inside me, for some reason or other, I cannot explain why, to do something. To do something that really matters. I can remember the first time I ever got in a fist fight. I was scared to death. In fact, I was almost petrified to the point of cowardice, to tell you the truth. And the boy I had to fight was a bigger boy, about twice my age, as a matter of fact. And he was the base bully. We lived on a military base in the Azore Islands called Lodge's Field. Actually, we didn't live on Lodge's Field. We lived in a village called Fonte de Bastard, which was quite some distance from the base. And one day we went to the base, and my parents dropped us, the children, off to play with some of our friends while they went to do other things. Well, when they came back, they parked the car and watched us for a little while. And that's when this bully decided to pick on me. To pick on me. And I was afraid of him. All of the children were afraid of him. That's how he got to be a bully for so long. And he hit me in the face with his fist a couple of times. And I didn't do anything. I didn't hit him back because I was afraid. My father saw this and knew that if he didn't do something right then, that I might turn out to be a coward for the rest of my life. So he got out of the car, he came over, and he knelt down beside me, and he says, "Son, you've got to fight him." I said, "Why?" He said, "Because he hits you, son, and you can't let him get away with that, because if he knows he can get away with it, he will always pick on you and hit you and hurt you." And I told my father I was afraid. And he said, "That's good, son, because you'll watch out for yourself if you're afraid. Now you go over there and you hit him back as hard as you can with your fist. And if he hits you, you hit him back again, and you keep hitting him until he stops." And so I mustered up what little courage I had, and I was shaking like a leaf. 7 years old. Walked over to this big bully who was taller than me. I could not hit him in the face if I tried. And I hit him as hard as I could, just as hard as I could, ladies and gentlemen, in the chest with my fist, or as close to his chest as I could get. And he hit me back and knocked me down, and it hurt, and my ears were ringing. But I became numb. Numb. He hit me so hard it numbed me. And I got up and I started hitting him as hard as I could, crying. Tears just streaming down my face, and I was crying and hitting him and swinging, and I knocked him down. I knocked him down. I actually knocked him down. I couldn't believe it. And I got up on top of him and I just started hitting him again, and he was hitting me back. And then my father came over and picked me up, gave me a big hug, and said, "You did fine, son. Go get in the car." So I went and got in the car with my mom and my little brother and sister, who were all sitting there with their mouths open, looking at me as if I had done something extraordinary. And my father had a couple of words with the local bully. I have no idea what my father told him, but he never bothered me again. And folks, to this day, I don't believe it was because I knocked him down. But I got to tell you, I felt good. I felt better than I had ever felt in my entire life. I felt like the king of the world. Not because I had hurt someone, but because I had done something right in the eyes of my father and my brother and sister and my mother and all the other little children who were there, whom this bully had always picked on like ever since we could remember. After that, he didn't pick on too many of the children. Not just me, but anybody. I remember it like it was yesterday. I've never forgotten it. And then a little girl who lived on the base, next time we came to visit, and I think the next time we came to visit, it was because we had finally got some base housing, so we could move from the village of Fonte de Bastard onto the base. And that would be much better for my father, who had to make the long drive twice a day. This little girl, her name was Glenna Jean Stowe. I'll never forget her either. She came and told me that I had really done something good and wanted me to come and play with her. And folks, 7 years old, you're not thinking about dating and sex and all of that kind of thing. I was just extremely pleased, and she was a pretty nice little girl. And we got to be really good friends. When I left the Azores, I never saw her for quite a few years until my father was stationed in Japan, and I went to Naramasu High School, and there she was. She had grown up, and I didn't recognize her. Not at all. All I knew is this girl is beautiful, absolutely raving beauty. But she remembered me. And she remembered me because I had fought the bully, and the bully had stopped picking up on her and all the other children. She had never forgotten that either. Now, we never became romantically involved, but we were good friends for many, many years. I don't know what's happened to her now. I don't know where she is. That's what happens when you grow up in a military family, when you're reared on military bases and in foreign countries all around the world. You are left without a hometown. You see, that's one thing that most of you have that I can never have in my entire life, a hometown. All of the schools that I attended are gone now. They don't exist anymore. All of the children that I attended school with, all the way through my high school graduation, are scattered to the four corners of the earth, and I have only been able to locate a very few of them. Some from Narmasu High School, which was at Grant Heights Housing Center, near a little Japanese village called Narmasu on the express line several miles from Tokyo. And I attended Narmasu for my freshman and sophomore year. And then we moved to Tachikawa Air Force Base, outside of Tachikawa City. And I bused every day to Yamato High School. And that's where I graduated in 1961. All my life, ladies and gentlemen, I have envied those of you who have a hometown. I would love to have some place that I could go back to and walk down the street and say, Mrs. Jones used to live over there. She taught me in the 4th grade. And there's old Jimmy Barnes. Boy, we used to play football together. And out there used to be a big field there where those houses are, and we used to build forts and play cowboys and Indians. I can't do that. I envy those of you who can. It's been a big, empty spot in my heart, because everybody needs at some point in their life to go back and examine their roots, look at their beginnings, see their old friends and, yes, even their old enemies and teachers and antagonists and protagonists and the guys you played football with, the guys you played hooky with, and the guys you hung out with, and the girls you dated. Not to do it all over again, but just to know that it really happened, and to know that they're really there, so that you can have a feeling of belonging, so that you can be a part of your own past. I can't do that. I don't even have my old yearbooks. I don't know what happened to them over the years. They just disappeared, floated away. They're gone. Gone. I miss them terribly. And so to make up for that empty spot in my heart, I encompassed this whole great nation as my home. I reached out and I wrapped my arms around this country, around the Constitution for the United States of America, around all of the principles and ideals for which it stands. I studied its beginnings, its history. I have researched its present, and that has become my home. Hometown, to be more exact. My home is here, with my family on top of this mountain in Arizona. But my hometown is the country, the nation. I have determined and set out to do all of the things that my father told me he represented and was doing and didn't. The World War II generation that let us down, that sucked up to the tit of big government after the war was over to get their piece of the big pie. Trying as hard as I can to make up for that. Now, along the way, I've become well versed in the methods and the manners of the beast, which has subverted from within and taken over my hometown. Taken it over. Is destroying it. I don't like it. And I want to do something about it. You see, because I want my children to grow up in my hometown free, with opportunity, without fear, especially without fear of their government. I am not anti-government. I have never been anti-government. In my quest to fulfill this, my initial plan was to serve in each of the armed forces, all 4 of them, retire, and go into civil service. That was my plan. I served 4 years in the United States Air Force, 10 years, a little over 10 years, about 11 years in the United States Navy. My next stop was the United States Marines. After that, I planned to finish up in the United States Army. Somewhere along the line, I discovered what was really happening. Actually, it's not somewhere along the line. I can pinpoint the exact place, the exact day, the exact year, the exact hour. As a matter of fact, when I made a tremendous mistake. Some people call it a tremendous stroke of luck because I never would have known or found out what I discovered, and would still be serving what I thought was my country, as so many people are still doing. In their innocence, as I was innocent. I was sent from sea duty to shore duty to Fleet Admin Unit at Singpac Fleet, which is the Commander-in-Chief of the Pacific Fleet's headquarters in Makalapa, Hawaii. And they handed me this huge stack of papers and said, fill these out. You can't work here unless you have a top-secret Q clearance. I was a second-class petty officer at that time. And I filled everything out, and I came to this long list of organizations. And you were supposed to check every organization that you'd ever belonged to in your life. And one was missing. It was the Order of Malay, which is the youth organization for Freemasonry. And so, knowing that it was the youth organization for Freemasonry, I checked Freemasonry, because Malay was not listed. And wham, bang, crash, zippity-doo-dah. This automatically opened up an FBI record on me, because it's the FBI. See, most security clearances up through secret are agency checks, which means they just run a communications check of all the different agencies to see if they have any derogatory information. And if they don't, you can get as high as secret security clearance, or you could then, let me put it that way. But to get top secret, and especially AQ, SCI clearance, which is what I had to have. SCI means sensitive compartmentalized information. The FBI has to do a complete background check, and ladies and gentlemen, they do not do it by phone. They literally, personally visit every single person that you ever knew in your entire life and ask them questions, the answers to which you would not want your mother to know. So I was kind of sweating that because I didn't know what could prevent you from getting a security clearance. And I passed it all. I got some strange phone calls from people that I knew wanting to know what bank I had robbed, why the FBI had been at their house asking all those questions. And I got the security clearance. Later I found out that everybody who had my type of clearance, a top secret Q clearance with an SCI, were all members of the Mormon Church, the Order of Freemasonry, the Ancient Order of the Rose and Cross, or Rossi Cruci, and several other different secret societies, and most of them were members of several of those. Later I discovered that those who belonged to the Mormon Church never went much higher than that, and you never saw them in the highest ranks of the military. And so I asked somebody once, and he told me, well, don't discuss it with any of them, but you see, their church teaches them to be obedient and never reveal secrets. And so we use them. He was confiding in me because he thought that I understood what was going on. I didn't. I didn't understand a lot of things that I was seeing. I didn't understand a lot of the things that happened, and I didn't understand the restrictions placed upon us when Americans were in peril, and we should have been going to rescue them, but were forbidden to do it. I didn't realize what was going on until years later when I began to put all the information that I had seen and heard together and realized that I had actually been a part of and had seen the plan to destroy the United States of America from within and bring about a one-world totalitarian socialist, one-world government over the ashes of the Constitution for the United States of America, and that it was the stated and avowed policy of the United States government to do that. When I realized that, I left the Navy. I took an honorable discharge as a petty officer first class, and I left the Navy. I never wanted to be a part of government service again because I knew what government service really meant. And I began a program of research and revelation and education to the American people, which I have not stopped since. Because somebody's trying to destroy my hometown. The only hometown that I have, the only one that I ever will have, the only one that can possibly mean anything to me because there isn't any other place for me to go. And ladies and gentlemen, if you've never seen anyone in your life who loves their children completely and totally with all their heart and soul, you come and visit me and you will see that person standing right here in front of you. So I cannot leave my children to the future that I know is coming without putting up a good fight to stop it. No matter what happens in the future, I want them to be able to say, my father did everything he possibly could as a human being to leave us a good future. I'd be very pleased if many of you and your children could say that about me also. I don't want statues or ribbons or medals or anything like that. I don't even want to fight another war. I fought a war in Vietnam. There are no heroes in war. There are people who do what they have to do at a particular time when it is necessary because there just isn't anybody else to do it, and that's all there is to it. When I fought in Vietnam, I was a patrol boat captain. First on the river and harbor at Da Nang, and then on the Qua Viet River near the DMZ. I saw an awful lot of combat. Me and my crew killed an awful lot of what we then called the enemy. And they killed a lot of us. And I worked with some damn good people. All of them boys. I was 25, and they looked up at me as some kind of an old veteran, an old salt. At 25 years old, I had a patrol boat with enough weapons that I could decide the life or death of anybody that we came across at any time that I wanted to, and could destroy whole areas of population. And if the weapons on my boat were not good enough, I could go to my radio and call in an airstrike or an artillery strike if I wanted to. And my crew were just young boys, 18, 19, 20 years old. My whole life became taking care of those boys. I never slept when I was on patrol, and I only allowed one man on my crew to take a cat nap if he actually really needed it, and I knew when they needed it. None of my men ever showed up for patrol high or intoxicated or drunk or even with anything on their breath. I didn't care, nor did I go looking to see what they did when we were not on patrol, because I knew that they could all be dead the next morning, and whatever they were doing, I didn't consider to be any of my business, except when they reported to the boat to once again go out on that river. And we only patrolled at night, ladies and gentlemen, and before we obtained starlight scopes, you have no conception of what fear and darkness really means. You can't even imagine it unless you've been there. And I know that some of you have. You are my brothers. I never ate until they had eaten, and I never went to bed until I knew that they had a warm bed to sleep in. When we came in off of patrol, if some of them wanted to go over to the enlisted men's club and have a few beers, I always went with them, and I always bought the first round, and then I left them alone. If I knew one of my men was broke, I gave him money, as much as I could spare. And I was so happy and so thankful that no man that ever served on that boat with me was ever wounded or killed. I thank God for that even today. That's a heavy responsibility to put upon the shoulders of a 25-year-old man. Young man, and if you want to know the truth, 25 is still a boy. Now that I look back on it, now that I'm 54 years old, I can tell you that when I was 25, I was just a boy too. Trying to do what I thought was right, and I'm trying to do what I think is right today. And this is where we have to come to some understanding, ladies and gentlemen, because I can't help you if you're deceiving yourself. If you're tuning into this broadcast because it gives you some kind of thrill or it's entertainment or you enjoy these programs even though I am telling you things that should make you very sad about what's happening in this country and should be stimulating you to some kind of action. I don't see much action going on. And I hear people playing children's games. To be a patriot, ladies and gentlemen, is not to be loyal to my country, right or wrong. Do you understand what I'm saying? To be a patriot is to be loyal to the principles and ideals and to the supreme law of the land which makes the country. And if there's someone in the government, in the country, who is doing wrong things in the name of the country, you cannot support it. You cannot support it. The nation is not geographical boundaries. It is an idea. This is something that I realized many years ago. It has nothing to do with geographical boundaries. It has nothing to do with the border between the United States and Mexico. It has to do with the way we think. It has to do with the principles and ideals which we support and believe in that made this the greatest, freest, most opportune nation upon the face of this earth. It is the reason why we were successful and the Mexicans were not. Why we were successful and the Canadians were not. It's the reason why out of all of the peoples of the world, this nation is the hardest to conquer and bring into a one-world government. Why this nation is the most difficult to disarm. It has to do with freedom. It has to do with the understanding of what freedom really is. It has to do with the knowledge that if you are not willing to die for freedom, you cannot and will not ever be free, because all your enemy must do is threaten your life and you will whip into a bowl of quivering jelly. You will kiss his feet and do whatever the hell he wishes you to do if you are not willing to die for those principles and ideals that lead to freedom. It's not about finding loopholes in the tax code so you don't have to pay the income tax to get out of paying the money because you don't want to part with it. It's about the fact that the income tax is unconstitutionally and unlawfully being applied to the citizens of the several states when they are not required, nor is it anywhere in the law that they must do so unless they are participating in certain excisable activities, which causes them to create corporate gain called gross income under the law. That's what it's about. It's about the difference between right and wrong. It's about whether you have been intimidated and scared to death by tyrants, which makes you pay tribute to your masters, or whether you will be free and stand on your own 2 feet and say, no, not now, not ever will I do such a thing. And be willing to die for that stance. Because unless you're willing to take it, you are already enslaved, and there is no rescue, there is no hope, there is no help, not now, not ever. And I just use that as an example because most people nowadays seem to think only in terms of their pocketbook and nothing else. Most people whom I have met in my life that call themselves patriots are really not. They're looking for ways that they can get over on Big Brother and get a piece of the pie like all of the socialists are doing. They're hypocrites and liars. You will not find that here. Those of you who have been listening to this broadcast for many years know one thing. You know one thing, and you know it absolutely for certain. When you listen to this broadcast, you will hear the truth, or the closest that I can come to that truth. And if it turns out that I'm wrong, you will always hear me correct it and apologize to my listening audience that I've done that many times. You also know that you had never, ever have to wonder where I stand on any issue. You don't have to wonder who I am, and you don't have to wonder if I'm going to change horses in midstream, because it will never, ever happen. Not ever. You don't have to wonder if the buffalo chip hits the fan, if I will be there with my rifle to fight on the side of freedom. I will be the first one there. And it won't be to fight for some scam like the Freemen were involved in. You better get one thing straight. I don't know why all of you listen to this broadcast, but I'm going to tell you this right now. If you don't have the courage of your convictions, go listen to Art Bell or Rush Limbaugh or anybody else but me. I don't want you to listen to me. I don't even want to know that you're out there. I want to talk to those people who need to hear my message and who have the courage of their convictions and are willing to die on behalf of their as yet unborn children for the principles and ideals upon which this nation was founded, that set people free for the first time in the history of the world, that allowed the slaves to be set free, that gave them status and citizenship and all of the rights enjoyed by anyone else. Not the pablum, politically correct bullshit crap that they're being taught in their ghettos right now, that the Constitution doesn't protect them, doesn't apply to them, that they're not really citizens. Those are all lies. Every constitution of every state counts every human being born in that state, in the territorial boundaries of that state, as lawful and full citizens of the state of the union in which they are born. Doesn't matter their race, religion, place of ancestral origin, whether they have one leg and one arm, or whether they stand on their head when they eat breakfast. It doesn't matter. I need people to listen to this broadcast who understand that they are part of the militia, whether they want to be or not. That the goal is not revolution, but restoration, restoration, restoration. That only in a free nation that recognizes and follows the 10 Commandments given to Moses on Mount Sinai by God can ever hope to live in peace with each other. Whether you believe that Jesus Christ was God or not, you must practice the Decalogue, and especially His personal admonishment. His personal admonishment. And before you can do that, you must be able to love yourself. Listen to me carefully. Love thy neighbor as thyself. If you cannot love yourself, you cannot love your neighbor, and that is a sickness that permeates the world. People who have been taught that they are worthless and that they are nothing cannot love themselves and therefore cannot love anyone else. You must understand that that leads directly to the founder's understanding of what freedom really is and how it should be practiced. That you are free to do, to say, to worship, to engage in, to have trade, to interact, to build, to create, to grow. Anything that you wish, as long as you never injure the person or property of any other human being. They understood that, and they created a government, a union of states, called the United States of America, into whose hands they gave very limited and very specific powers. The states retained their sovereignty. The federal government has no jurisdiction within the territorial boundaries of any of the states, never have had. Unless they purchase a piece of property and the legislature of that state cedes jurisdiction to the federal government. In the state of Arizona, this has never occurred. The state of Arizona has retained jurisdiction over all public lands owned by the federal government within the state of Arizona. It means if you're a police officer and you take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, you damn well better read it. Not just read it, understand it, memorize it, know it, and be willing to give your life in its defense. Otherwise, strip that uniform off your back and get the hell out. And the same for all of those in the military. That is the supreme law of the land. And that is your first obligation and duty above and beyond all others. And if you're one of those people who must be a police officer because you're insecure and the uniform and the gun gives you status and makes you feel like a man, get out and seek mental help. You are sick. And the same with anyone who fits that definition who happens to be in the military service. I want people listening to this broadcast who understand what it is that I'm talking about and are not playing silly, hypocritical, stupid games. Who understand and are willing to research and continue to gain understanding of the law, the real, true law, not the subversion that is being practiced today. And who are willing to stand and, if necessary, die in defense of that law, the real, true law. If you're not, your children playing child's games, and you had better leave the game before you get hurt. Listen to me carefully. You can't stand in defense of the law if you've done the research and you absolutely know that you are not made liable to file or pay the Marxist Communist Manifesto plank called the income tax. You cannot play games about it. You cannot say, I'm not going to pay the tax, so I'll file a return and put 0 in the box. You cannot say the federal government has no jurisdiction within the territorial boundaries of the state and then watch and do nothing as United States Marshals carry off your neighbor. You must go to his defense. You must. If you know about it, go to his defense. And you must stand with a gun in his defense, and you must say no. You have no jurisdiction here. And you must be able to cite the law. And if you are a police officer or a police chief or a sheriff or a sheriff's deputy, you must stand in defense and in support of the Constitution of your state, the Constitution for the United States of America, and you must protect the citizens within your personal jurisdiction when a foreign nation attacks them. Why would you allow United States Marshals or Internal Revenue Service agents to come and strip a family of their property and haul off their children? Why would you do that when you know they have no jurisdiction in your jurisdiction? And to allow them to do that is exactly the same as allowing the Army of Cuba to come and do exactly the same thing. I know why some of you do it. It's politically expedient. You might wish to work for a federal agency someday. Or if you stand up and do the right thing, you might lose your little job. Or if you've been with the department for X number of years and you only have 2 more years to go until retirement, you might lose your retirement. Let me ask you this, Mr. Brainchild, or Ms. Brainchild. What good would it do for you to keep your retirement if you leave freedom in the hands of an enemy, and if that enemy rips it to shreds and eventually, just a few years down the road, enslaves you and your family and your children and their children and your great-grandchildren and great-great-grandchildren live in slavery for the rest of their lives? Can you be bought so cheap? Are you really that worthless? I'm not. You couldn't give me all the money in the world to betray my posterity. I would not and will not ever do it. How can you do it? And for what? For what? Why would you sell yourself, your children and their children, your neighbors, and your country so cheaply? Why would any of you do it? Do you really think that by staying off of someone's list, you're going to escape the consequences of the future if you do not stand and make sure that that future is good? What would it take to make you stand up and be counted? What has to happen to you before you get it through your thick head that you will not ever escape the consequences of sitting on the fence or hiding? All these survivalists make me sick. They make me ill, literally. They're all stocking up to go out and hide in the woods until the conflict is all over so they can survive. What do they think they're going to come back to? If those of us who are willing to stand in defense of all of the cowards who will flee don't win. And how long is it going to take all of you to understand that if we all stood up together and said, no, get back in your cage, you can't fool us any longer, we know what the law is, we know who you are, we know what you're trying to do, we know that you are in subversion, executing treason, and it's over. And ladies and gentlemen, what would it take to make you understand that if we all did that in concert, it would really be over? And no one would be injured, not even with a tiny scratch. Because they're cowards. They wouldn't even think of attempting to overcome a whole people who stood together. But you see, I know that won't happen. I know human nature, and I have studied history well. Most people are cowards, have always been cowards, will always be cowards, and they will hide and whimper and wail and gnash their teeth and cry, waiting for those of us who are not cowards to do something on their behalf. And we will, as we have always done throughout the history of the world, we will, but let me ask you this. In light of that, why will we? Why have we? And what are you going to do to us when it's all over? Because that always happens too. You see, the vast herd of cowards become shamed, and we become the symbol of their disgrace, and then they must get rid of us. That has also happened throughout history. And somebody that nobody ever heard of usually mounts up and takes control of the government. You don't believe me? Read history. Real history. Read it, study it. Understand it. I'll tell you why we do it. Because we have a spiritual motivation that most of you cannot and will not ever understand. We do it out of love. We do it for our children and your children and all of the future generations of the world, which we refer to as our posterity. And we really don't give a damn what happens to us. Just as all of you get mired down in little bits of rumor and disinformation and lies that are passed throughout the so-called patriot community, hand to hand, mouth to mouth, I take all of those things and sift through them, find the lies and the deception, the disinformation, and cast them out and put together the pieces of the puzzle that give me the whole picture. I am fighting for a higher cause. I know that someday I will stand before God, and God will judge me. And all that I hope for in this entire world is that when it happens, He will not have to say anything, bad or good, just smile. And if that happens, I will be enthralled throughout eternity. I will have such joy within my soul that you cannot even imagine. Just a little smile, that's all I want. I would like to be able to look down and see that my children are living free, without fear, with opportunity to create and make of their lives what they will, according to their own abilities. I would like to see them smile at police officers instead of become afraid when they see one like people are today. I would like to see the law in place, the real law. I would like to see it enforced and obeyed. I would like to see all of the traitors rounded up and taken somewhere and put on some island where they can have their utopian government there amongst themselves, with all the liars and deceivers and manipulators and thieves all there, so that they can really learn what their type of world would and will be if they have their way. That's what I want. And I don't want people to call me on this broadcast and try to stroke me or make me feel good because they didn't pay their income tax. I don't care if you pay it, if you're honest about it, and if you believe that you should pay it, and you can cite me the law that says that you should pay it, and that you're committed to that type of government, and you have the balls to stand up and defend it. I would respect you, even though you might be my enemy. But I do not respect people on my own side or who profess to be on my side who are liars and hypocrites and who are, most of all, deceiving themselves and think that they're going to deceive me in the process. It's not necessary that you deceive me. If you have deceived yourself, you have accomplished the most difficult thing in the world. You should be extremely proud. You don't need to foist it on me. You're listening to WBCQ, Monticello, Maine, USA. This is the Hour of the Time, and I'm William Cooper.